It is my honor and joy to introduce you to our keynote speaker, Dr. Neal Barnard. Dr. Barnard is an adjunct professor of medicine at George Washington School of Medicine and president of Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine. At PCRM, Dr. Barnard leads programs for preventive medicine, good nutrition, and higher ethical standards in research. A brilliant researcher, he has authored over 100 scientific publications and 20 books showing the power of a plant-based diet in treating and reversing common diseases such as diabetes, obesity, and others. In 2016, he founded the Barnard Medical Center in DC as a model for making nutrition a routine part of medical care. Dr. Barnard has been a personal hero of mine, as many of you know, and has inspired me to bring the power of nutrition into my own clinical practice. Our Lifestyle Docs Clinic would not have been possible without Dr. Barnard's encouragement. His talk today will focus on his brand new book, The Power Foods Diet. In his talk, Dr. Barnard will show how the addition of specific power foods can tame your appetite so you can naturally eat less, trap calories in your digestive tract, and ramp up your metabolism. Dr. Barnard, thank you for all that you do, and thank you especially for being here with us today.
Like magic. Right. Well, thank you very much. Thank you all for coming, and a special thank you to Manish and Vandana for your wonderful work and for organizing this brilliant conference. So thank you so much. I want to talk about the issue of weight loss, which has been of great concern to so many people, partly because losing weight is important for health, but also partly because many of the methods that people use end up being rather destructive to them in various ways, either dispiriting or expensive or not getting to where we need to be. And there are certain wrong turns that we sometimes make, and one of which is that people think, well, the whole big problem we have is just processed foods, and if I just avoid that, I'll be okay. If you don't mind, I want to just take a couple minutes to talk about this issue. For any of you who have talked about, say, a plant-based diet or something to a patient or a colleague, and they're preoccupied with other things, like processing, or I only eat wild-caught salmon, or I only eat volunteers, or whatever the ideas that people is. This is kind of one of the ones that has come up in the past few years as, well, as long as you avoid processed food, it's an issue. Now, there are issues about processed foods. This is a picture that I took outside my childhood home in Fargo, North Dakota. And it's beautiful corn crops, as far as the eye can see, all identical, because it's all genetically modified. And no human is going to eat that. That's cattle feed there. But corn can also be raised for humans, and I can take it and I can process it into corn flakes. And is that good? Is that bad? Well, it's an altered form of the food. And in some cases it's bad because you're taking away fiber or whatever, but in some cases it's good because you may be adding vitamins or minerals or something like that. So researchers in Brazil devised a system they call the NOVA system that classified processed foods as either unprocessed or processed ingredients, processed foods themselves, or ultra-processed foods like a soda where nothing is recognizable from where it started. And the idea was that the more things are processed, the worse they are for health. That's an understandable thought. So processing can occur in a factory like this one, and I'm going to call that a mechanical factory. And processing can also be in a chemical factory, like distilling grains into liquor. But there is such a thing as a biological factory. That's what I want to really focus on right now. And here's what it looks like. You feed corn into this biological factory, and out come things like eggs or muscle tissue. And the whole reason that farmers buy these factories and feed things to them and take output is because it increases the value of it. You can make some money doing that. And if it's a funny thing to talk about an animal as a factory, we've been actually using biological factories in many different ways. Yeast, for example, is a factory that we use to make wine or bread or beer. Without yeast, these products wouldn't occur. There are bacterial factories, which we will use to make sauerkraut, or you can make kimchi with bacterial fermentation. And it's funny to think of mold being used as a factory, but it is. Without mold, you wouldn't have miso, you wouldn't have soy sauce, you wouldn't have sake. So we have biological factories to make things. Now, anybody know what this is? Okay, that is, those are coffee cherries or coffee berries. There's coffee beans inside. And this is the factory. This is the Asian palm civet. And you feed these to your captive Asian palm civets. You feed them the coffee cherries, and in their fecal material, the berries are found and picked up. And I am not making this up. This occurs in Indonesia. You can gather them, and people will buy them and make coffee out of it. It does not taste better than the original, but it's sort of a gimmicky device. It's called luwak coffee, okay? Swell. Now you could take corn and feed it to another factory, this factory. And our French friends think that there's nothing wrong with this because you can make foie gras. Foie gras literally means fatty liver. You're selling a diseased organ, particularly around holiday times. So let's just walk through the factory. Okay, so I'm going to feed corn to a chicken. The saliva contains amylase, which is an enzyme that digests carbohydrate. And then if the chicken is fed more and more corn, it can be stored in the crop where you can have a whole lot waiting in there. And then it goes to the proventriculus, which is the chicken's stomach. And stomach acid comes in and pepsin starts digesting the proteins. Then it goes to the gizzard, where little stones that the chicken has consumed with muscular contraction start grinding foods up. And then through the duodenum and the small and large intestine, the nutrients are absorbed, the fiber is separated from the nutrients, and the fiber is excreted. So what has happened in this biological factory? The first thing is that corn has proteins, but those proteins are modified into an animal configuration. So proteins, as you know, are made of amino acids. It's like a string of beads, and each bead is an amino acid. And plant proteins have a certain structure, but when they're converted to animal proteins, a couple of different things happen. Mainly, you're altering the amino acid sequence. It's not exactly the same amino acids. And many of us grew up with the idea. Did you grow up with this idea that animal protein is superior? It's got all the essential amino acids. By the way, plants have all the essential amino acids as well. In case any of you didn't get the memo, the old idea was that if you eat plants, you're going to be missing some amino acids, that they're always missing one or another. All plants have all the essential amino acids. Okay? It's not just quinoa. They all have it. Now, it's still a good idea. It's still a good idea to have a variety of plant foods. That's a good thing. But all plants have all essential amino acids. So anyhow, Harvard researchers asked this question. If we've got this idea that animal protein is somehow superior, what's the health advantage? Is there a health advantage to getting this superior protein? So they looked at a large group of individuals in research studies and looked at who lived and who died, and they found that if you substituted plant protein in place of animal protein, mortality goes down. Even if you control for cholesterol content and saturated fat and all these others. So if I'm converting corn protein into chicken muscle protein, it doesn't help. It can concentrate it, but it's not healthier for you. And let's say I turn it into egg protein. Much worse. I'm way better off getting my protein from plants. And by the way, if you have an egg, a large egg, and a potato, a large potato, which one has more protein? Now, your bodybuilding friends will say, eggs, that's my protein source. Did you know there's more protein in the potato? You don't believe me? Look it up at the end of this lecture. You know, our potato friends, they need a lobby group. People think they're fattening. They really do. Now, there's nothing fattening about a potato. The potato comes out of the oven. It's this humble thing without a whole lot of calories. And that's when we add the butter and the cheese doodles and the sour cream and the bacon bits. And we say, oh, that potato, so fattening. Wait a minute. It's the same thing with bread. The bread comes out of the toaster and we slather it with butter. We blame that innocent carbohydrate. That was just a little plate that brought you all the fatty toppings, which are fattening. Okay, am I cheering you up? Okay, sorry, all right. Okay, so anyhow, but it gets worse. When you take animal proteins like chicken and you heat them up, heterocyclic amines form. These are carcinogens. They cause cancer. The number one source is chicken meat. It's not in the chicken when the chicken is slaughtered, but when you heat animal muscle tissue, any animal muscle tissue, including wild-caught salmon that you bought at Whole Foods, heterocyclic amines form. And chicken is the number one source. And this is one of the heterocyclic amines. It's called PhIP, and it's heavily regulated because every cancer researcher knows it causes cancer. So my team of research killjoys went to the state of California, and we went into McDonald's and Applebee's and Burger King and all the places you see here. And we took chicken products and sent them to our laboratory and said, we want you to analyze them and tell us how many of them have heterocyclic amines in them. And the answer came back. We found heterocyclic amines in every single establishment at every single chicken sample that they could sell. And that's simply because when you heat chicken muscle, even if you grill it with a non-fat method, these heterocyclic amines from just heating muscle, that's what happens. So a well-meaning parent is bringing their 7-year-old daughter to this place, getting the grilled sandwich, thinking that's healthy. It's carcinogens in a wrapper, okay? So we're not only altering the proteins, but this biological factor is altering the fats. The corn oil comes in about 14% saturated fat. That's the bad part. That's the one that's related to high cholesterol. And saturated fat also is associated with Alzheimer's. Okay, I'm going to turn it into chicken fat. It's now 30% saturated fat. The chicken's body modifies the fat. And this chemical, cholesterol. Corn doesn't have cholesterol. Plants are not interested in cholesterol, but the chicken's body manufactures cholesterol. And it turns into all kinds of things. But one of the main things about it is the difference between you and a potted plant is there are many differences really. Let's be honest, but one of them is that the potted plant isn't going anywhere, and you are. So to have flexibility in your muscles and your skin and all of your tissues, you need cholesterol. Cholesterol is these little yellow hinges allow you to be flexible. The plant isn't so flexible. The plant has cell walls. You have these nice membranes that have cholesterol as a hinge, okay? So the chicken's body makes it, and it packs a lot of it in the egg because a chicken egg has to have all the ingredients to make a new chicken. And so there's huge amounts of cholesterol in the egg as well. And then we're going to remove the carbohydrate. Corn has healthy, complex carbohydrate. Chicken removed it all. It's gone. Corn had lots of healthy fiber, keeps you regular, good in a lot of ways, cancer fighter. Oh, the chicken removed it. There's no fiber in the chicken at all. Oh, wait a minute. No, there is some. Where is it? It's in a bucket because the chicken's intestinal tract removed it, and now it's in the chicken feces. That's where the fiber is. And this is a big problem for chicken farmers. If there are any chicken farmers around, you know what I'm talking about. Chickens are slaughtered at 6 weeks of age. That's right. The whole lifespan from hatching to slaughter is 6 weeks. Americans eat 1 million of them every hour. That's right. And when they're trucked off to slaughter, left behind is what they call chicken litter. It's bedding and feces and parasites and all these kinds of things. And chicken farmers have to do something with it. What can you do with it? You know what you can do? You can feed it to cows. Now, they will not eat it if that's all you give them. But if you mix it up, only about 15-20% with the rest of cattle feed, you can actually feed it to cows and they will eat it. And just about every hamburger you ever had was from a cow that was eating partly chicken feces and partly cattle feed. Okay, it's getting worse, isn't it? Okay, all right. So, okay, well, here it is. This is chicken litter, and they do what's called deep stacking, because if you stack it up, it naturally heats up, and the idea is that that'll kill off some of the salmonella that's in it, so that the cows will not be transporting as much salmonella back and forth. The other problem, though, is that you can use it as a fertilizer. You can take this chicken litter and you can put it in your fields. And the problem, though, is that it contains chemicals that the chicken's body made, steroid hormones. And there's a whole big science about what to do about these hormones. And can we destroy them by deep stacking? Is there any other way to get rid of them? And let me encourage you, if you want to learn more about deep stacking and how to handle your load of manure, on July 17th, if you've got $7.18, you can go to the North American Manure Expo. I'll see you there. And there are thrilling demonstrations of what you can do with your chicken manure. Okay, if I haven't cheered you up enough, cows have a slightly different mechanical system. They've got a big rumen, which is the biggest section of their 4-part stomach. And it's a fermentation tank where for about 48 hours, they're fermenting the grass and things that they ate. And then the reticulum takes the big chunks and sends them back up to get chewed, and the small chunks go on through the digestive tract. So it goes through the omasum and the abomasum. And then finally, in the small and large intestine, they absorb the nutrients, take out all the fiber, and it's exactly the same story all over again. The plant proteins that went into the cow are now rearranged to make animal proteins with a different configuration that is not optimal for your health. And the Harvard researchers said, well, we've already picked on chickens. Let's see what happens if I take red meat and substitute plant protein in its place. Yeah, plant protein, healthier, associated with less mortality. What if it's dairy protein? Same story. Getting away from dairy, getting your protein from plants is associated with reduced mortality. And by the way, for anyone who thought the only meat I eat is fish, bad news. Fish is not as good for you as plant protein. You're way better off. Okay, heterocyclic amines, yes, they're in beef too. Chicken is the worst source, the number one source, but beef has it too. And I'm going to alter the fat. It's corn fat. Corn fat is about 14% saturated. Beef fat, is it 30% like chicken? No, it's 50% saturated fat. Your arteries are snapping closed just looking at it. Cholesterol, do cows have cholesterol? You bet. They practically invented cholesterol. There's huge amounts of it in them. Oh, but they got one other thing. If you milk a cow and you were to send a pail of milk to the laboratory, they would say, there's something else in here you haven't talked about. There's estradiol. What's estradiol? It's an estrogen. It's a female sex hormone. And wait, it's not just in milk. It's in cheese, it's in yogurt, it's in ice cream, it's in every single dairy product. Why? Because a cow is a living factory, and her body makes estradiol. And if she has milk, it has estradiol. And farmers on any cattle, any dairy operation, artificially inseminate the cows every single year. And as you know, they take the calves away. The males become veal. The females are separated out and isolated. It's kind of a creepy thing. But they are milked well into the next pregnancy. So when they milk them into the next pregnancy, they get more and more estradiol in the milk. And you can all biochemists know that it's there. They just don't want to tell you about it. So you're bringing your 8-year-old son to someplace and giving him ice cream. You're feeding him female sex hormones. You're bringing your 7-year-old daughter somewhere and having some Velveeta or some cheddar or whatever it is. You're feeding them female sex hormones. Now, it's not much. It's only a tiny trace. But your body already has all the hormones you're supposed to have. And tipping it over can be problems. And at the Adventist Health Study, researchers did a cool thing. They've been studying Adventists because it's a population of health-conscious, teetotaling non-smokers who happen to vary in diet. And there are people who don't consume dairy at all. There are people who consume a lot of dairy. And what they found is the more dairy you consume, the higher your risk of breast cancer. Okay, that makes sense because we've always known that breast cancer is driven by hormones. The more estradiol you've got in your blood, whether your body is making it or whether you're ingesting it as a pill, the higher your risk of breast cancer. And if you're drinking dairy products, your average American consumes 70,000 calories worth of cheese every year. You're getting these hormones that your body doesn't want and doesn't need. Okay, in China, they did an interesting study because China, as you know, is changing year by year. Because of economic changes, they've got more meat coming in, more dairy. Dairy is not a Chinese tradition. Cheesecake is not the thing at the Chinese restaurant. But because of westernization, about 1 in 5 women in China now consumes dairy fairly regularly. And so in the China Biobank study, where they brought in more than 500,000 people, they found that the more dairy people are consuming, the higher the risk of breast cancer. And breast cancer goes up 17% per 50 grams of dairy. 50 grams is less than a quarter cup. So if a person has a cup of dairy every day, just multiply that by a little more than 4. Okay, so, all right. So, by the way, speaking of the Adventist Health Study, they showed that if I turn this around and I go from omnivore down to vegan, I'm going to be a slimmer person. But I'm also going to have much less risk of type 2 diabetes. The more you get to a plant-based diet, the more you say, I don't want to be part of eating those foods processed through an animal's body. The more you get to the plants, the healthier you're going to be. Okay, so there are mechanical factories, and there are chemical factories, and there are biological factories. And my point is that if in a mechanical factory, it will change things. You might add sugar and salt and vitamins and all kinds of things. But a biological factory does enormous changes to the foods that we're consuming. So when someone says to you, vegan, I don't know, but I don't eat anything processed, there's almost nothing more processed than chicken. Okay, so there you have that. Make sense?
Yes.
Okay, let me shift gears. I want to talk about power foods. And power foods are things like this humble little berry, or all these berries. And the reason that I call them power foods is that Harvard researchers did this really cool study. They brought in more than 100,000 people, and they tracked what they ate year by year by year. And they found something that didn't make sense at first. If people increased the amount of certain foods that they ate, they ended up losing more weight as the years went by. Now, that's the opposite of what you think. Wait a minute, if I'm eating more, I gotta slim down, right? But that's not what happened. If they ate more of specific foods, they lost more weight. And the granddaddy of all of them was the humble berry. If I ate a lot of blueberries, I would lose weight. And not just blueberries, it was also things like strawberries, and even a blueberry in a muffin. As long as you didn't fill it with butter and all that kind of stuff. Okay, but the more people ate them, the more they increased, the more weight they lost. And let me run you through the list, and then I'm going to come back to the berry and try to explain why this is. The number 2 group was cruciferous vegetables. You know about all these. These are your cancer fighters: broccoli and cauliflower and Brussels sprouts, the foods that our grandparents always wanted us to eat. Green leafy vegetables. So these are things, it could be salad greens, but also things like spinach or asparagus. The 4th group is the melon group. And melons, whether it's cantaloupe or watermelon, whatever, all strongly associated with weight loss, and kind of a no-brainer. I mean, it's a lot of water in there, not a lot of calories, a lot of fiber. Okay. Number 5, citrus. But when they said citrus, they didn't just mean oranges, grapefruits. Also juice counted. And that's important because a lot of people will say juice is not as healthy as the whole fruit. That's true. But in the Harvard study, juice still counted. It still seemed to be associated with weight loss. Okay, number 6, the humble bean. Legumes, beans, peas, lentils. The more that people ate them, the more weight they lost. Okay, so by the way, these foods are everywhere, but unfortunately, modern life is sort of causing them to be sort of second class and neglected in favor of meat, cheese, chicken, that kind of thing. Okay, let's go back to the berry. Why would a berry cause weight loss? And the first thing that you notice about a berry is it's blue. And that blue color comes from anthocyanins. These are antioxidants, and they are powerful for health of the berry. They protect the berry, but they protect you too. And they come in different colors. There are purple ones, there are red ones in strawberries, and when the leaves turn in the fall, those are actually variants of anthocyanins too in the leaves. Don't eat the leaves. Okay. No, don't. But the rest you can have, and they're healthy for you. And so researchers in the UK, 2 years after the Harvard research results came out saying that there's something about berries, researchers in the UK went a step further. They brought in, I'm not making this up, 2,734 identical twins. And everybody got a DEXA scan. And that means you go into this device that's scanning your body, and it's looking at your body composition, how much body fat you have, how much muscle, and so forth. And what they found is that within each twin pair, the twin who ate the most anthocyanins had about 9% less abdominal fat and less total body fat compared to her genetically identical sister. Now, genes weren't operating. It's something about their food choices, and anthocyanins seemed to matter. But it wasn't just blueberries and strawberries. They also found any kind of anthocyanin-rich food. Like a pear has that little red blush on the bottom of it. That's anthocyanin. Grapes, the purple color of a grape, anthocyanins. They all seem to do this. What we believe is happening is that they augment metabolism slightly so that you burn calories just slightly faster with the anthocyanins. But it's not just berries. Cinnamon, a bunch of spices, ginger, capsaicins in hot peppers, but also cinnamon are also associated with weight loss. And the credit might go to an aldehyde chemical. There's a natural aldehyde in cinnamon. And researchers are not very creative people. They wear bow ties and stuff. So when they were trying to come up with a name for this aldehyde in cinnamon, this was the best they could do. So anyhow, so that's what it's called. And so it increases your body metabolism. And here's how it works. You have in your intestinal wall this receptor called the TRPA1. And it's just sitting there in your body, waiting for you to have cinnamon toast. And once you do, yes, if this works, this is what happens. The cinnamaldehyde comes down and attaches to it. That triggers the release of a small amount of adrenaline in your body, norepinephrine, and then your metabolism goes up. Just not huge, just a little bit. So you're burning calories a little bit more like you did when you were 14. And so researchers then decided, okay, we need to test this out. And many different research groups have tested this out. And in a 2017 study, they brought in 116 people, and they gave them 3 grams of cinnamon per day, which is about a teaspoon. And the way they did it was they put it in capsules. So you didn't know if you were getting the real thing or a placebo. And they randomly assigned people. And what they found is that over 16 weeks, the average person lost a little more than 7.5 pounds. And what they believe is happening is it's just gently ramping up your metabolism a little bit. Okay, cool. Now, when I read studies like this, I'm always a little skeptical. So I'm thinking, did you have your kind of a Ouija board effect on your data? So what we look for is consistency. And this will not be on the test, but just to kind of show you how we weed through the data. These are all the studies that have looked at cinnamon's effect on your BMI, your body weight, basically. And if the result if you gained weight, then the little square that shows the net results, it would be on the right of that 0 line, and none of the studies are there. If you lost weight, then it's on the opposite side. And as you can see, all of the studies are significantly to the left there, and the bottom line is it works. Okay, so anyway. So there are 3 ways that foods qualify as a power food. They either tame your appetite, they trap calories, or they boost your metabolism. Just want to walk you through each of them so that you can kind of think about this when you're looking at foods and pick out the ones that love you back. Your digestive tract is such a busy organ. It's trying to manage all the indiscretions that people have. Your digestive tract, when you eat lunch, it says to your brain, hey, look, I've just eaten a bunch of food, and you've got to stop thinking about food because I've got all I can manage. I've got all I can digest. So it makes glucagon-like peptide 1, GLP-1. And that's made in your intestinal tract, goes through the blood to the brain, and it reduces your appetite. You with me? Okay, so this is important because what if you couldn't turn your appetite off? You know, your digestive tract is overwhelmed. It's at some point you've got to stop eating so that I can digest. Now, that's a great thing. Imagine if you could take GLP-1 and market it to people as an appetite turnoff switch. Well, you can't because it's natural, your body makes it, you can't patent it. So Novo Nordisk made synthetic GLP-1, named it Wegovy, and Ozempic, and you can inject it at a cost of $15,600 a year. You can get a synthetic thing. Your body makes it, okay? My research colleague, Hanna Kaliova, brought her team in and fed meat-based sandwiches to volunteers and measured their GLP-1 release. That's the bottom line here. The meat-based sandwich was from McDonald's, okay? And what she found is basically nothing. That the meat-based sandwich did not trigger the release of GLP-1 to any significant degree. You see that? Okay. But then she brings in the volunteers, gives them another sandwich. This one is now totally plant-based. You see there's a big spike in GLP-1. Boom, boom. So what's going on here? Your intestinal tract is looking for specific things. It's not looking for animal protein. That's not the GLP-1 trigger. It's not looking for a big glob of saturated fat. That's not a good GLP-1 trigger. It's looking for high fiber foods. It's looking for complex carbohydrates. Those are the signal that then allow this intestinal tract to say, good, got what I need. Now brain, turn down the appetite. So you will eventually stop eating if you eat a McDonald's sandwich. I mean, let's say you have one or two or more or something like that. You will get full, but what happens is your stomach is full. And it's that sensation of fullness and pain in your stomach that makes you say, stop. You have appetite turn-off cues that are primed way before that point. But if you're not eating the foods that trigger them, you don't get the appetite turn-off. Making sense? Yeah. See what I mean? Okay. So when people say, oh, gee, you know, my appetite is just out of control, your appetite control switch is probably fine. It's just that nobody is turning the levers on it in your body to work with it in the right way. We're not eating the right foods. Okay. So the other thing is a real no-brainer. And let me ask you, how many calories are there in a gram of carbohydrate or sugar? Anybody know? 4? That's right, 4. Any kind of carbohydrate, whether it's from a potato or rice or pure Domino's sugar, it's got 4 calories per gram. But how about if it's fat? How many calories in a gram? 9, that's right. And that's true whether it's chicken fat or beef fat or extra virgin olive oil, 1040 motor oil. Yes, don't do this, but if you were to cook with it, it has 9 calories per gram. And fiber has almost none, either none or close to none. So our research team brought in a group of people and asked half of them to do a Mediterranean diet. And a Mediterranean diet, as you know, is actually, people don't really care what is in a Mediterranean diet. It just sounds so sexy. People like the idea. You know, I don't care, but, you know, I'll be driving down the coast of Tuscany, having my glass of wine at sunset. I'll do the Mediterranean diet. It's an easy sell. It sounds wonderful. But by now you're probably thinking, well, wait a minute. You just said that there's 9 calories in every gram of fat, of any kind of fat, so that's probably true for chicken fat, fish fat, and even olive oil? Even extra, yes, even, you can call it virgin. It still has 9 calories in every gram. I mean, what a great marketing, I mean, that's brilliant marketing, I have to say. Anyhow, so we brought in 62 people, they wanted to lose weight. Half of them we asked to go Mediterranean, the other half vegan. We gave them a dietitian to work with every single week. The dietitian believed in, practiced, and recommended either the Mediterranean diet or the vegan diet. So they had enthusiastic help doing it. And during the beginning of the study, the Mediterranean people thought, this is a great, really indulgent, wait a minute, when does the weight loss kick in? They weren't really losing weight very well. Now the vegan group, at first they were nervous, but pretty soon they realized, you don't have to acquire a taste for folk music to go vegan. It's okay. And you don't need tie-dye or anything. And no, you don't, really. And they lost weight really great, really well. Okay, 16 weeks. We asked them to stop, wait for 4 weeks, and now trade diets. So the Mediterranean group now went vegan. And suddenly the weight started coming off. And they said, this is why I'm in the study. Okay, good. But now the vegan group now had to start Mediterranean. And they just about quit the study. They rebelled. They said, wait a minute, I've lost my taste for chicken wings. I don't want greasy, oily stuff all the time. Yeah, I get the idea, but I don't want that. My tastes have changed. And they were regaining the weight they lost. And they wanted to quit because they hated this diet. Okay, so we have found out, and other teams have found, that a Mediterranean diet, while it is in many ways better than the diet people came in on before, it genuinely can be. And you can even make a case for some health benefits of olive oil, like polyphenols that might lower blood pressure. That's all true. However, for weight loss, it is a complete placebo, a complete waste of time. A Mediterranean diet does not cause weight loss, while a vegan diet does very much so. And nor does a Mediterranean diet lower cholesterol. It just doesn't do it. Because you're eating cholesterol. You're eating all this stuff in the chicken, or the little bits of red meat that they allow you, or the fish and the oily foods, okay? All right, so we've talked about appetite taming. Appetite taming depends on using foods that are high in fiber, high in complex carbohydrates, modest in fats. Calorie trapping is a crazy thing. You eat a high fiber food, and the fiber breaks up into a million little sponges that go down your digestive tract. And the fiber is going down there and it's finding calories you haven't absorbed yet. And it grabs a hold of them, won't let them go, and it carries them out with the waste. That's right, you can't absorb these. You're flushing your calories down the toilet, literally. So researchers at Tufts University did this study where they brought in volunteers, 90 people, and half of them they asked to eat white bread and white rice. And the other half they said, have brown bread, whole grain bread, have brown rice. In other words, one has no fiber, the other is high in fiber. And what they found over a 6-week period was that the whole grain group trapped and got rid of about 100 calories per day. Now, they did this in a way that my research team is never going to do. They got stool samples from everybody. And yes, they did. And they teased through them all and found all these unabsorbed calories. So all you have to do is make sure that your foods are high in fiber. And this can be grains, that's good. Fruits, even better. Vegetables, better still. And best of all, that humble bean. You know, beans are good food. They've got protein. They got iron, they've got calcium, they got little traces of omega-3. Beans don't have a good lobby group. But I'm going to cheerlead for my friend the bean. We're going to say things like, put a bean in your routine. We're going to make beans popular, right? You know? Yes, beans get no respect. Okay, all right. Metabolism boosting, that's the third thing. Your metabolism goes up when you eat, depending on what you eat. If you come into my laboratory, we'll seat you in a chair, and I'll put a mask over your nose and mouth. You're going to feel like an airline, like a pilot, like an astronaut or something, because we're monitoring your oxygen consumption and your carbon dioxide output. And that tells us how fast your body is burning calories. It gives us your metabolic rate. And then I give you a test meal, and your metabolism goes up because you're putting fuel into your cells. Some of that fuel is going into your muscle cells, and your muscle cells are your burners, and they're burning up some of the calories. And then other calories are consumed just in the process of absorption. But your metabolism rises for a good 3 hours or more after the meal. Okay, now let's do this experiment with butter. I'm going to give you a pat of butter, or 2, or 6 or the whole darn stick of butter, and nothing happens. You just don't get a burn at all. Butter and other fats are fully absorbed within the first 40 centimeters of your digestive tract, leading to no burn at all. So we did a research study to investigate this. And the first time we did this is back in 2005, and we just repeated it, and I want to share with you the results. The first study we did, we brought in 64 women. They were all after the age of menopause, all overweight. They had all done Atkins, South Beach, Jenny Craig, Nutrisystem, cabbage soup, everything. They had all gotten frustrated in the process. And we said, we're going to either randomly assign you to a low-fat vegan diet or a National Cholesterol Education Program diet. It's a control diet, more chicken, more fish, less beef, healthy-sounding diet. And it was a 14-week trial, and we asked people not to change their exercise patterns. Keep them constant, because we're trying to see what the foods alone will do. And when the people started the vegan diet, they were frankly scared, because we told them they could eat pancakes and spaghetti and cereal and bread and things. And they said, oh, I'm going to gain a ton from all those carbs. And we got together with the group every week for support to help them figure out how to eat these foods. And week 3 of the study, one of the participants said, Dr. Barnard, I found out something. Did you realize that Twizzlers are vegan? And you know, when you do research studies, you set rules. And the rules for this study were no animal products, keep oils low. That was it. I didn't think about Twizzlers. And I looked at the package, and it's true. So we didn't forbid them. So our, yes, not the best choice, but our low-fat, vegan, Twizzler-fueled participants set off on their path to the unknown, and their carbohydrate intake did go up. It did go up. Their fat intake went down substantially. And what happened? They lost weight. They lost about 13 pounds in 14 weeks. The control group lost about 8 pounds. Okay. So despite their rather loose vegan diet, they lost a substantial amount of weight. But the most important thing is what happens long term. And over the long term, on the control diet, people put the weight back on, which is what happens with that kind of diet. But on the plant-based diet, the weight stayed off. And people were skinnier at 2 years than they were at 1 year afterward, which is what happens. You're making a qualitative shift in your foods. And there's no reason why the weight should come back. Okay, so back to the metabolism. Everybody came into our laboratory as the study was starting. We sat them in the chair, we put the mask over their nose and mouth, we fed them a test meal, a specific test meal. Their metabolism went up, we recorded that. They then began the study. 14 weeks later, they come back. They've now been vegan for 14 weeks. We sit them in the same chair, put on the very same mask, feed them the same test meal. And what we discovered is their metabolism is not the same anymore. It's gone up about 15% beyond what it was. Now, they were already doing well by having plant-based meals give you a nice after-meal burn. But if you have been doing it consistently, you get a better burn. And here's why. Your muscle tissue, that's your muscle mass, that's your calorie burners. You've probably heard people say this. Don't lose your muscle mass, because that's what you need to burn calories. Your muscle cells take in fat particles from foods that you have been eating. And the fat particles, this is not belly fat or thigh fat, this is just microscopic fat particles in your muscle cells. You're not going to see them, your doctor won't diagnose them, but we could see them with magnetic resonance spectroscopy, which is a real expensive scan that allows us to look into your muscles, into your liver, and the rest of your body and quantify fat buildup. When fat from your cheese pizza builds up in your muscle cells, your mitochondria don't work anymore. Your mitochondria, which are your little microscopic intracellular burners that you might remember from high school biology, they are impaired by that fat buildup. So if you think your metabolism has slowed down over time, you're not wrong. But it's not due to genetics, and it's not due to aging, it's just fat buildup. So on a low-fat vegan diet, there is 0 animal fat in your diet. There isn't any anymore. And if I keep the oils really low, the fat starts to dissipate. And we quantify that in our research studies. We see the fat going away. And so the muscle cells are more responsive. If you've got type 2 diabetes, that's why the diabetes starts to reverse in many people, because your muscle cells are responsive to insulin again. They're no longer insulin resistant. They're insulin sensitive. They can take glucose out of the blood. If you're just trying to lose weight, your cells can metabolize better. Is this making sense? Okay, all right, very cool. And so if a person has done this for 14 weeks, their metabolism is getting better and better and better and better. Okay, cool. So the power foods, there's a whole bunch of them. I'm just going to list them for you really quickly, but you'll see them in my book, The Power Foods Diet. There are a lot of spices that work, but these 3 are the ones that I want to pick on especially: cinnamon, hot peppers, ginger. Bell peppers taste great. They don't change your metabolism though. The hotter they are, and I can say that in Houston, the better they are. It really is true. It's the capsaicinoids that do it. Fruit, all fine, except I'm going to say a bad thing about the avocado. They are delicious and tasty, but nature had a sort of sense of humor, and on April 1st debuted the avocado, pretending it's a fruit. It's really a big nut pretending to be a fruit. It is so high in fat that it's going to get in your way if you're trying to lose weight. I'm not saying they're bad. It's not really bad fat. But guacamole is not your friend if you're trying to lose weight. The whole legume group is great. Yeah, I know, I'm sorry. The whole legume group is good, including soy products. So some people say, well, like a soy burger or soy sausage, it's so processed. Oh, so processed. Yes, well, the burger you're replacing was really processed because it went through that animal's body. And if you give them a processed soy burger, it's always better than what it replaces. And that's true for soy sausage or even soy bacon. You know, soy is so versatile. One day they'll make snow tires out of soy, probably. Anyway, so it's perfectly fine. It does not have estrogens in it. It has isoflavones that reduce breast cancer. Let me say a word about this. Have you heard people say, don't have soy because it'll give you cancer? Yes. Okay, all right. I wrote a whole book about this called Your Body in Balance. Soy products contain isoflavones that are strongly associated with reduced risk of breast cancer and reduced risk of cancer mortality in women previously diagnosed with cancer. So you don't have to have soy. It's totally optional. You don't need it. But it does reduce the risk of breast cancer about 30%. And it reduces the risk of prostate cancer in men. So what it contains are isoflavones that attach not to the alpha receptor, the alpha estrogen receptor, which is the gas pedal on cancer. That's where estradiol attaches, what you got from your cheese pizza. The isoflavones from soy attach to the beta receptor, which is the brake on cancer. So when people consume large amounts of soy, it's part of their routine because that's what they grew up with. Their risk of cancer goes way, way down. All right, so we like our friend, the soybean. All the grains, perfectly fine. Get them whole, have the fiber in them. That's the calorie trapper. And the whole vegetable group is all super. There's never been one we didn't like. But when I grew up in Fargo, anybody been there? Have you seen the movie? Yeah. Okay, all right. We don't eat seaweed in Fargo, okay? Never even heard of it. But that nori roll, nori is the green stuff on your cucumber roll or your asparagus roll, like sushi. Okay. It's a cool thing because your thyroid gland regulates your metabolism. Your thyroid gland does it with thyroid hormone. Thyroid hormone is made from iodine. Now, back in 1925, 1924, the Morton Salt Company started marketing this new product called iodized salt. They wiped out iodine deficiency practically, and everyone was getting iodine, kind of no matter where they lived. But now, being cool, restless, creative people, we eat Himalayan salt or sea salt or kosher salt, and they're not iodized unless it's specifically labeled as such. So we're starting to see people who are running low in iodine. Now, you can get iodine from dairy products if you want, because before you milk the cow, you put on a disinfectant, an iodine-based disinfectant on the udder. And some of that disinfectant, yes, it will get into the cow's milk. And yes, it is Anyway, don't go there. But sea vegetables are the best source. So don't have fish in your sushi, but have the cucumber roll, the asparagus roll, the sweet potato roll, and the nori wrap is loaded with iodine. Same with the wakame in your miso soup, or arame, which is a really delicate seaweed. I've got a arame cucumber salad in the Power Foods diet that I hope you'll try. On a hot summer day, it's just the greatest thing ever. And so these give you the ability to make thyroid hormone to keep your metabolism running strong, and so you're not getting all sluggish. Okay, so Dustin Harder and Lindsay S. Nixon, who are the world's greatest recipe developers, partnered with me to make this book, The Power Foods Diet. And it just came out about, a week ago or 2 weeks ago. And it's really the funnest book I ever wrote, because it's got all these food pictures that are just this close to food porn, I have to admit. They really are. And we did this kind of for a reason, because we wanted healthy eating to be attractive and to take this idea that health means not eating. Instead, it means bringing in to your diet the foods that really love you back, and let them kind of push the bad stuff out of the way. And we just made it really fun and really easy. So Dustin said, okay, you said blueberries, you said cinnamon, I'm going to make you a blueberry cinnamon syrup. And Lindsay said, well, I know what we're going to do with it. We're going to put it on my French toast. And so she made cinnamon French toast. And I'm like, America's favorite breakfast. And it's a slimming breakfast. And anyway, they just made all these really just killer foods that are really, really great. And they're easy. And we made some of them as what we called easy recipes, others convenient, where you don't have to do anything, really. They just kind of make themselves. And advice about what to eat if you're at Subway or Taco Bell, or, it's not the pinnacle of culinary art, okay? But if that's where you're eating at a fast food chain, there are choices for you there. And there are also things, let's say it's dessert time, and you want desserts. We've got all kinds of healthy, wonderful desserts. So that's all I got. I want to just finish by saying, I hope that what we've talked about makes sense and that you found this useful. But more than anything else, I want to thank you, and I want to thank the organizers, because is this not true? There are a lot of folks in this broader community, I don't mean just Houston or Texas, but anywhere in the civilized world, who don't know any of what we've been talking about, who are laboring under a bunch of misconceptions. And it gets worse. They're not only paying a physical price for it, where they may have weight problems, they may have diabetes, they may have hypertension, they may have cardiovascular disease, and are high at risk for cancer, even thinking that they're doing the right thing, or in some cases thinking that diet doesn't matter because their problems are entirely genetically determined or something like that. And then when they try to do the diet that their doctor, well-meaning doctor, may have given them, they found it punishing because they couldn't stick with this very low calorie limit every day. Or they couldn't stick with a low carbohydrate diet that said, don't eat fruit, and don't eat bread, and don't eat starchy vegetables, and da-da-da-da-da. And they ended up blaming themselves. It's not the diet's fault. It's my fault. There's something wrong with me if I can't do this. And we end up beating ourselves up. And we pass this along to the next generation, and we never get our way out of it. The way out is with knowledge and with understanding these tastes and trying them out. And the best thing you can do is when you're experimenting with different foods, experiment enough until you have the occasional disaster. I want to reward anybody who had a kitchen disaster where you made a recipe that turned out terrible. You followed the instructions and it tasted horrible, or it blew up in your oven or something. You know why I'm going to praise you for that? Because that means you are experimenting. If you never had a disaster, you're just not trying hard enough. So I want to reward everybody who's learning, who's trying, who's putting things to the test, who's disagreeing, and you take that information that you have learned in your own life and you share it with other people. Because when you share it, either one-on-one with your family and your friends, or better still, on social media where you reach a whole lot of people, you are going to plant a seed that is going to change what a person thinks about and what they know and what they talk about to the next person, and you will never know whose life you will change. You'll never know whose life you might have saved. But I guarantee you, it's huge. And with a group this big, it becomes unstoppable. So thank you for letting me share this time with you. Thank you so much.
So if you could you expand a little bit on what the different endocrine synthesizers are are really, when it comes to tumor necrosis factor A, is it actually inhibiting the cytokines that are produced, or the actual TNF-A?
I'm sorry, I missed the beginning of the sentence. Were you asking about anthocyanins?
Yes, sir.
Okay. The anthocyanin biochemistry world is two things. I want to say two contradictory things. One is it's huge, it's exploding. But the other thing about it is it's still somewhat contradictory, and people are trying to still sort it out. I think the best thing to say is that the anthocyanins almost certainly work by multiple different pathways, and we're trying to sort out which of them is the biggest priority at this point. So I'm sorry to not give you a more definitive answer on that. So it's a terrific question. Yes, please.
Hi. The comment you made about the heterocyclic amines content when cooking poultry and beef, I read something that the slower you cook it, the less it produces. Is that even true?
Yeah, it's true. It's a function of heat and time. So if you were to eat raw chicken, you wouldn't get any heterocyclic amine. Don't do this. Yes, you would get salmonella, but you wouldn't get the yeah, exactly. Time for one or two more?
Yeah, one more.
Yeah, sure.
I've been reading a lot about benefits of going raw. What's your take on that? I take it it's not a big deal one way or the other, but can you expound on that?
Yeah, what are the benefits of going raw? I do think that there's a lot to be said for raw foods. And I mean, after all, in our sojourn here on Earth, people didn't evolve with sterno. You know, I mean, it's not like we were cooking, and so much of what we ate for most of our time on Earth was raw. So I think that the more a person incorporates raw foods in their routine, really, in theory, the better. The issue for me is which are those foods? Which are the foods that really work raw? Because broccoli, for example, or cauliflower, they don't work very well raw. I mean, they're just so hard to digest. And a bean doesn't work raw either unless you sprout it, in which case, then it does work. So my theory is that the foods that work best, at least theoretically should work best, are the foods that were native to East Africa, because that's where we started. And restless, creative people started out there and then started wandering out to places like New Jersey. And, I mean, explain it. I mean, what was the idea? But anyway, once people arrived here in Houston, that was the first time people had corn, or for that matter, peanuts or chocolate or potatoes. I mean, these are things that we didn't have. And so my guess is that the foods that we tolerate the best are the foods that we adapted to during the evolution of our species. So it probably isn't a tomato. It is something else. On the other hand, you can try different foods and kind of see which ones love you back the most. So I think raw is perfectly fine. All right, there we go. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Barnard.